I can see what this is about. Where the fuck is everyone?
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of Talk That Talk. I'm your host, Adriel Ramirez, and with me I got Alex Martinez. And in today's episode, we're going to be reviewing Amazon's RoadHouse, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Daniela McGuire, Billy Magnuson, Jessica Williams, and introducing Conor McGregor. So Roadhouse was directed by Doug Liman, who also directed, in my opinion, a really good movie of Edge of Tomorrow. So, as we dive into this movie, Alex, I'm going to start with you, sir. Tell me what you liked about the movie.
Let me just start off by saying, has Jake Gyllenhaal ever missed in any of his roles? I don't think there's any role that I've seen this dude play in that he doesn't carry the movie as himself, even if he's a supporting character. And in this movie, you saw it. Like, he took the reimagined form of Dalton, not just being a bouncer, but being a retired UFC fighter with a troubled past, with something that happened in it, and he created this dark persona in him, but still paid homage to the past Roadhouse where he still had the information of, hey, let's take it outside. Hey, let's be nice. And like taking dudes to the hospital after he beats them up and all that stuff. And then when they push him too far, you saw that crazy side of him, that monster that he doesn't want to be. And then when I saw that scene, I was like, dude, that's like Mike Tyson. He's like, yeah, I used to cry before every fight because I didn't like the guy I became. I was like, dude, that's the persona we saw come out of him. And it kind of looked crazy, right? Like when he was becoming that dark side. And then in his fight scenes, he was really good. Shout out to the fighting choreograph. That I think Jake Gyllenhaal as a whole carried this film. That's my first point as far as a pro.
So, for me, I'll just to speak on Dalton real quick, since you kind of brought him up, right? Jake Gyllenhaal. Like I said, I think he very believable. I think as a person who was, like you said, ex USC fighter now, based on his past, now has to be find other means of work, right? Try to get paid another means. So he's gonna be a bouncer, right? So overall for the movie, I felt like it was funny, it was fun, but at the same time, kind of lacked some things which we'll get into later. But
Yeah,
a lot of the characters, I felt they were good characters, but they weren't given enough to do. Like the first person that comes to my mind was Charlie, the girl at the bookstore.
yeah,
Good, sweet, cool, the kind of kid you want your kid to be, right? Who's kind of there helping out with the family business. There, she's really making kind of trying to. She makes friends, trying to get people to come into the business, but at the same time, is one person that's kind of befriending them, right? So a good character. Again, I felt like the actress that played her portrayed her very well for what she was given, but she wasn't given enough. Dalton, again, Jake Gyllenhaal did good. Kind of like as a leading man, I felt like he did carry the movie a lot. But again, just the script itself was okay. And then for me, another person who kind of stood out for me, but didn't really give him a lot to do, was that character of Mo. When they
dude,
first introduced him, and Dalton
loved
was
him,
like,
loved him.
"Hey, those your guys' bikes?" He's like, "Yeah, that red one over there on the end, that one's mine."
He's
And then he's
me,
like,
he's me.
oh wait, like he's gonna go mess with our bikes now, right? So I felt like his character had a lot of good comedic relief moments, but
Yeah,
again, just not enough of his character in there to make it really like for him to like kind of do anything else. And then also for me, the biggest selling point for this whole movie, my favorite part of this whole movie was Knox, right? Conor McGregor.
yeah,
I felt kind of leading up into this, I felt a lot of people were, I don't know if they were just doing it because he's a UFC fighter now trying to transition to an actor or whatever the case was, but I kind of felt like people weren't really giving him the chance to kind of shine. But then
yeah,
in this movie, with what he was given, I felt like you would have, if this was the first thing that I've ever heard of him before, like if I didn't know he was a UFC fighter, I would have thought he was just a normal actor. Like he did really well in his role. He played the psychopath really well, and
yeah,
then a lot of the comedic beats that he had, they landed. Like a lot of the jokes that he had, like I was like,
yeah.
yo, he's funny. He's a funny character. But yeah, I mean, those were really the main points that I had. Did you have anything else to add on what's good about it?
Well, let me piggyback on Knox and then potentially Charlie. So like you said, McGregor's debut film. But as far as this, I think it was tailored towards him as a character, how he does his UFC stuff. Obviously, he's not as psychotic or a psycho like this. He's really out there and a big character in the UFC world. But as far as this character in this movie, I liked every moment of him. His fighting experience definitely showed. When we got those POV angles of him in the bar fight scenes, I was like, oh yeah, this is really good. So I think that a lot of that ended up carrying the film too, like his fighting prowess and also like his villain demeanor from that UFC stuff, like being that guy who could carry himself. But just to piggyback on what you said about Charlie, that one character that was his first friend, she was like, "Hey, did you go see that tree?" I was
Yeah,
like, "What?" And in my whole head, I was like, "Is this tree? Is he gonna lift the tree and hit somebody with the tree or something?" Like, I was like, "This tree has some significance." But thanks to her, I got a little insight on the movie of a different, because she's like, "Oh, it's like you're in a Westerner," and I was like, at the first time I saw it, I just let it go. But like the second time I was watching, I was like, she does say it's a western, and I started seeing the movie as a western. I was like, all right,
yeah,
outlaw cowboy comes into town, sees a tyrant, helps out with the tyrant and the posse and all that stuff, right? And if you look at it in that perspective, hey, this is a western movie in the modernized era. That's how you can really appreciate this movie. As you mentioned, there's going to be a couple things that we're going to not like about this movie, and we're going to go over that. But oh, and as well as Mo Turo Castro, dude, like him and JD Pardo did really well in this film. Especially JD Pardo. If you guys ever seen Mayans, like that show is so goated, and to see him as like a comedian guy, dude, like uh, he's like. You have him and Mo just going at it. He's like, "Where's the hospital? 25 minutes away. Don't tell him." And then like him, like stuff going over his head. Do you have insurance? He's like, "What? Like, do you have medical?" He's like, "Ha, I don't need it. You will though." And then like
yeah,
it was just that chemistry in that first bar fight scene with Jake Gyllenhaal and all those guys like was so perfect. And then you go to the scene where he's taking him to the hospital and all that stuff, and he's like bump, and then there's like like I was like, dude, those that if this was an action comedy film, I think it would have like excelled more if they would have put more jokes in on that, and they made it too serious for at some points, right? But I think the casting was really good. Like I was looking over the casting after I watched it. I was like, yo, this had a lot of big things. I think that also the build up with the one scene of Post Malone we got where he was like, I'm not fighting that guy. Like I was like,
yeah.
all right, he's establishing his dominance as far as a character. Like everyone's really scared of him. But other than that, I think. Yeah, I think I got everything as far as what I really liked about this. The point of view fight scenes and Jake Gyllenhaal and some of the new characters were really stellar on their little roles that they had.
So just to add one more thing, I think again, just kind of touch on how good of a leading man Jake Gyllenhaal is. A lot of his comedic timing in this was really good as well. Like a couple parts that stand out into my head, or obviously in the beginning when he first goes over to the Roadhouse, and like you say, takes everyone outside, and the way he handles that comedically. The next time, I don't remember who the thug's name's supposed to be, but the guy that waits for him outside of the bookstore, and then he's like, he flashes the gun that's in his waistband. He's like, "Hey, my boss wants to talk to you. Get in the car." He's
Yeah,
like, "Yeah, no, I don't think I'm gonna do that." He's like, "Yo, I have a gun. Did you not see?" He's like, "Yeah, but it's in your waistband, and if I break your two fingers, it's not really threatening." And
yeah,
then I don't know, just like the way he like carried himself in that scene, and then he
yeah,
ends up breaking the other guy's fingers.
yeah,
And then the guy that's with him is like, he comes out of the car to go help him. Is, "Hey, do you have a gun too?" And the guy's like, "I think I left it in the car." So
yeah,
there's like comedic timing in there. And I think the part that I think I got like the biggest laugh out of, well, I guess the second part, or there's two big parts that I get really a good kick out of. One, obviously, being that meme that's going around right now with Conor McGregor. Him walking into the thing and he's like, "Where the fuck is everybody?"
yeah,
So that part I still made me laugh. And then the other one that made me laugh was when near the end of the movie when Jake Gyllenhaal goes to the boat to go kind of like I guess like the big climactic scene, and he's
yeah.
getting on, and that same guy from earlier who like forgot his gun in the truck, he's like trying to intimidate him, and then goes to like punch him, or he punches him, and he
Oh
just like
yeah,
he like
he just
doesn't
eats
move. It just
it.
like,
He
yeah,
eats
he just
it.
hits him, and then that was it. Like nothing happened. He was like, okay, like did you is that it? Like did you get your fill? Like come on. And then that was it. And like just the way the whole scene played out was like I don't know the comedic timing of it was really well portrayed by Jake Gyllenhaal. So with all the positives that we kind of just talked about right now, so we're gonna switch gears and go into what we didn't like about it. Alex, tell me what you didn't like about this movie, sir.
If I'm being honest, I hate doing this, but when there is a reboot, when there is a reimagined film, like I hate comparing them, but you have to, right? And it doesn't go on par with the plot for the first film. They really established Dalton in the first film with Swayze really well. He's a bouncer. They give us a lot of exposition and they show his ability to take lead. He said, "Hey, I'm getting rid of you because you have an attitude problem. Hey, I'm getting rid of you because you're dealing drugs and all that stuff, right?" And he takes lead of that bar, and you see his three rules, and you see his actual persona go through the bar and all that stuff. And you don't really see that much fighting out of him until later on in the movie. Off the bat with Gyllenhaal, you have a different side of Dalton, you know, a UFC fighter and all that stuff, which, like I said, wasn't Gyllenhaal did really good. I just think the plot of him per se of this storyline wasn't that. I felt the love interest was really forced. The doctor, I was like, dude, they gave us a whole well, not to be for the kids. There was a whole sex scene in the original film. I was like, give us something more than a makeout scene. Like, and it wasn't even a good makeout scene. It was just like two kisses, and I was like, oh, they're in love. Like now I
Yeah,
gotta save her. I
yeah,
was like, no, dude. Like this isn't enough for me. As well as Charlie, right? The girl when they spoilers if they when they burned down her bookstore, he's all like, no, I was about to leave, but they burned down their bookstore and they were nice to me for like two scenes, so I'm gonna go help them out. And that's what his breaking point, which I understand. Like if you go through a lot and people are teasing you, and then that might be a breaking point. Hey, someone took it out on an innocent person, and that threw me over the edge. So as far as his chemistry and the build up with his relationships with certain characters, whereas I didn't really appreciate. The only really one I really liked was him, Lucas Gage, Billy, the other bouncer or bartender that was there when he was giving them tips and all that stuff to become like the next him when he bounces. I thought that was a really good montage, and I was like, yo, he developed that relationship really well. Other than that, all the other ones were seemed like out of convenience, like the sheriff being a crooked cop, and then his girlfriend's mother throwing that in
yeah,
the third act, and I was like, okay, now like you're just trying to like cover up plot holes and get him to the end of the story really, really well. And as much as I love Connor's acting and stuff, I think he was poorly written. They could have made him a bigger bad in this film, or
yeah,
even Billy Magnus's character Ben Brandt. They could have made him a bigger bad. I just felt like there was a bunch of little like if you ever watch anime, there's a big bad at the end, and you get a lot of
mhm,
smaller arcs that you're facing. And I just feel like we had a bunch of henchmen along his
yeah.
route. Like this doesn't even feel like this is going to be lead to a big bad at the end, like the dad that's in the prison or whatever. I just felt like we just got a bunch of like filler episodes of henchmen fights, basically good fights, but they're all henchmen. Like you don't feel a bad guy presence in this film at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I have another one, but I don't want to ramble too much. Do you have any cons?
So honestly, a lot of the ones that you already kind of spoke on are kind of what I feel. So kind of the stuff that I have that's weak points and the cons for me of this movie were Dalton's backstory. I didn't really see too much marketing out in this movie. I don't know if it was just me, but I didn't really get like a lot of marketing out for it. So if it wasn't for me actually watching the UFC fight where they actually filmed this like the scenes from, I
Yeah,
would not have known that he was supposed to be, an ex UFC fighter until he has his first flashback, right? So like I felt
yeah,
like at that point it's already kind of into the movie, especially when you set up with Post Malone's character where he's like, "Oh no, it's that guy. It's that guy. I'm not going to fight that guy. You know who he
yeah.
is. You know what he did." But for
I'm
me,
like,
I'm
no, I
just like,
don't.
yeah, I'm just like, I don't know who he is at all. Like he's just another guy who happens to be like, kind of fit. Like I don't know
Yeah,
who he is. So I felt like the backstory for him, I felt like they should have did it where even if they didn't give you everything, they could have, started off the movie with the fight and then cut away maybe before, if it was revealed later that he killed him. But, maybe, it shows him kind of beating him up and then cuts to, him walking into the bar about to fight Post Malone. So, okay, you already know that. All right, so he has some type of fighting background and there's some type of reputation as opposed
yeah,
to you're supposed to know that somehow going into the movie. So another thing that I really didn't like was the first fight in the Roadhouse because when he first meets Frankie, who's the owner of the bar, she
yeah,
explains that that they've been having a lot of trouble. There's been a lot of rowdy crowds that are going there, and that everything's kind of been a mess. So right before Dell gets there, a fight breaks out, but like That doesn't really say why. Like the dude kind of just like pushes the guy, and then like a bar fight
Yeah,
kind of ensues. So I'm just like, it was pointless to me. Like I'm like, if your bouncers can't handle that, then you need to find other bouncers. It's not really like someone where you got to go to a whole nother city outside of where you are to go seek out one other person. Like it just to me it seemed kind of pointless. And then they kind of touch on what you said about Ben Brandt's character. I just felt horrible villain, horrible. Like he was not a boss, like you said, anime or even video games.
yeah,
He was not end game boss level,
yeah,
villain. He was a rich kid who had dad's money and wanted to do something and was kind of throwing a fit. That's not the
yeah.
kind of vibes I got for him. Not not at all villain material. And then another to go on to another point would be, I know you said you kind of liked his character a little bit, or you at least liked some of his comedic timing, but Dell, he didn't work for me either, man. Like his character was just he was like a throwaway character. Like he was
True.
like you said, he was a little goon in the beginning that was kind of giving him trouble, and then he died because he got attacked by the alligator. So it was
Yeah,
like, man, like he was a throwaway. And then yeah, you hit the nail on the head earlier with the romance with Ellie. I don't know why they had to like try to squeeze that love interest in every single movie. I don't
yeah,
know. It was really weird. There was no chemistry there. And then like you said, they kind of just was the convenience of the character of like, okay, this is my love interest who for some reason this doctor that is going to yell at me for bringing her patients. Like that's
yeah,
something that happens in the real world. And then based off that, I love her now. Oh, and
yeah,
then we go on one date. Oh, and then I run into this little speed bump of there's a crooked sheriff running the town. Oh shoot, that's your daughter. Kind of gets me out of trouble twice actually, and
yeah,
then I don't know. It just I felt like her character was just to kind of get the story from like point A to point B because they kind of ran out of ideas. Like, oh, how is he going to get over this obstacle? Love
yeah,
interest, and she's the sheriff's daughter. That's how. So it
yeah,
was very, very convenient. I don't know. And then also there was some. I don't know why they would use it. I mean, again, maybe it was for the budget or whatever the case was, but and the some instances where they use CGI, it was very bad. Like there was
Oh,
some like of the
that
fight
beginning Post
scenes.
Malone fight scene.
Yeah, that, and then like when Dell tries to run Jake Gyllenhaal off the bridge, like the whole thing when he gets hit by the car twice.
Yeah,
I don't know, it was bad. And then also too when they did that Fast and the Furious trick where he jumps from the little speeder to the boat and he does like
yeah.
touches the hand
Oh,
onto
the
the
Toretto
onto the
move.
boat. Yeah, I was like, what the heck is going on right now? Horrible. And then the last point that I have, because again I don't want to ramble on either, but again, for me, for whatever reason, I like Conor McGregor's character a lot. It took out of a 2 hour long movie, he didn't show up until an hour into it. So
Yeah.
like I felt like the movie picked up when he got in there, and then for it to be an hour into the movie before something like good like that happens, I feel like it was a waste. Like it was just horrible. I don't know. It wasn't good at all.
So as far as that, just to close out this cons list, as far as his character, once he was introduced, they should have made him the main bad.
Oh,
I
I
feel like
agree.
what they were doing is they're still trying to make Brant the big bad and Connor just be another henchman that knows how to fight. I was like, no, as soon as Connor was hit up by the dad, like he should have been the main one. Like even if Connor killed Brant, and he's like, nah, you guys work for me now. The issue with Brant's character was less about him being like a rich little daddy's money type villain, was that he didn't really have an army. He had five guys, like
Yeah,
four guys, like three guys majority of the movie, and it's like you just felt like this dude has no power over this town. In the first film, you had a guy that literally established the whole town and was literally Ponzi scheming the whole town. So you had foundation of a good villain. Like you can't go against this guy. He runs the town. This guy was just like, oh, I have rich, and then my freaking dad owns a crappy Airbnb and a boat. Like that's all you got for this character. Conor
yeah,
McGregor, he's like, oh yeah, this dude from prison called me and I could fight, and like in the fight scenes you saw his capability. So it's like, oh yeah, this dude is a aggressive counterpart to Jake Gyllenhaal. He's the Batman to Bane ratio, right? He's not Ra's al Ghul, but like he's a big bad. And then they just fell short of saying, hey, we're gonna go back to the main villain from the first act of this movie being the main villain, and that's where I felt like it fell short.
yeah. It was. I agree with you 100%. They should once they brought him in, especially once they showed like their first fight with him and Jake Gyllenhaal. and he establishes dominance, they should have just made him the main villain from there.
There.
Yeah, it was a waste, I think. But yeah, now that we've kind of covered, the pros and cons of this movie, we're gonna get into some ratings, sir. So I'm gonna start with you. So what would you rate this movie out of 10?
So going through all the variables, and I really hate to do this, I just think this is going to be a throwaway film that no one's really going to go back to and say, hey, this is one of Jake Gyllenhaal's greatest performances, because he did really good in this. And it's a shame with the casting you have in this. I just think this is going to be a movie I forget about. Like, there's so many good movies coming out this year that this movie's going to go behind my head. If Connor continues to make movies, he's going to have more success in other movies. Like this is gonna be one of those movies that just throws away. So I'm honestly giving it like a 5.5, maybe a 6 on top. It really wasn't that good enough for me to say, yo, this was a good movie. The fight scenes were good, and that's what gives it the 5. Like literally just the fight scenes, but literally all the convenient settings, the forced character development, forced chemistry, it's really not that well put in this movie, and I don't know if it's like recasting or like rescheduling or what happened in this movie where it fell short, but I think there's a reason it went to streaming services and not to the theaters.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, what about you, man?
So I'm kind of really glad that you said that because I watched the movie twice, right? The first time I watched it, I was like, I heard, I kind of talked to some people about it and they were like really hyped about it. And then when after the ending of when the movie finished, I was like, I didn't like this movie at all. Like
Yeah,
it had some fun parts, but I didn't like it. So I was like, man, am I being overly critical of certain things? But yeah, and then upon my second reviewing, like watching of it, the things I didn't like stood out so much more, and I was like, yeah, this movie's riddled with flaws. I don't know. I just couldn't. Like I said, when the action part of it was good, Jake Gyllenhaal did a good job, playing his part. He acted the hell out of this thing. Conor McGregor, for me, I was the highlight of this movie, which is funny because I didn't even like when he was still fighting. I
yeah,
wasn't really like a big, Conor McGregor fan, but for whatever reason, like in this movie, he just his comedic chops in this one were just good. But overall, I'm where you are. I'm at a 5.2 out of 10. Again, just like you, just the action. Honestly, I think that that POV fight scene kind of saved it. It kind of brought me back to that one movie with The Rock. What is it? Was it Doom? Yeah, so it kind of brought me back to that. But again, another one of those movies where it was a good attempt, but just fell flat. Yeah, so I'm
yeah.
gonna have to hard 5.2.
Yeah, the only reason that, like I'm right there in the cusp of like 5.5 and 6 is literally the fight scenes, especially that last fight scene where he's like taking off the knife from him and then doing that whole stab you here, stab you here, stab you here, block you here, stab you there. Like I was like that was a pretty dope scene and it was like a really like gory scene. It was just like it took a lot of the movie to like dislike for me to like appreciate that scene. And then it's like it's like bad with good, right? You can appreciate the good parts of life and the good parts of movies because there was a whole lot of bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's like if I watch like a movie like Ip Man or like any like Jet Li movie, like I feel like the fight scenes are gonna be way better than what I saw from Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor. It just that this movie had a lot of bad scenes, and then those good fight scenes are like excelled because the rest of the movie on par.
All right. So, do you have anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Just that Mysterio was right. Screw you, Peter Parker.
Thank you guys for breaking down another movie with us. Again, I'm Adrian Ramirez. That's Alex Martinez, and we are Talk That Talk. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yes, sir.